Today, professional wrestling is an insane universe of scripted drama and mind-blowing athleticism, where we all know the outcomes are decided before the show even starts. The good guys and the bad guys are super obvious, and the stories are planned down to the tiniest detail. But it wasn't always this way. Way back in the day, before scripts protected every single person, the wrestlers policed themselves. They had their own enforcer, a man who didn't just hold the world championship, he had the bone-breaking skill to make any challenge, real or fake, a career-ending mistake. What happens when the champion is, without a doubt, the most dangerous person in the entire arena? This is the insane story of the man they called a shooter, a master who could literally break you in half. This is the story of the real-life terror of the squared circle, Lou Thesz. To understand Lou Thesz, you have to get this one forgotten idea: the shooter. A shooter wasn't just some actor playing a part. He was a legit fighter, a grappling master who could win a real fight anytime, any place. In the early 20th century, wrestling was the Wild West. Promoters were constantly at war, and the champion was the ultimate prize. If a rival wanted to destroy your business, he could send in a wrestler to actually beat your champion. They called it a double cross, and literally steal the title and all your credibility. That's where the shooter came in. The world champion, the guy carrying the company on his back, had to be more than just a fan favorite. He was the company's insurance policy. He had to be so dangerous in a real fight that nobody would even think about double-crossing him. He was the guardian of the illusion because, with him, it was basically real. The champ's ability to handle his business was everything. For over a decade, no one was more trusted, more feared, or more capable than Lou Thesz. He was, to so many people, the last true champion. He held the NWA World title for a combined total of 3,749 days. That's over 10 years. That record will almost certainly never be broken. But that number isn't just about being popular. It's proof of his power to rule with an iron fist. Born in 1916, he started combat sports super early. His dad was a wrestling champ and started teaching Lou the basics when he was just 8 years old. As a teen, Lou was already a champion amateur, and at the insane age of 16, Lou Thesz turned pro. The world he walked into had no catchphrases or fancy costumes. It was all carnivals and smoky arenas, full of guys who could switch from performance to a real fight in a second. To survive, Thesz had to become a hooker. In old-school wrestling, the word hooker was terrifyingly literal, and no, it's not what you think. It was a wrestler who knew hooks, insanely painful submission holds made to force a real surrender. These were the guys who knew how to break your bones and tear your ligaments. They were the apex predators, and Lou Thesz was going to become one of them. His training in this brutal art started with George Tragos, a feared Olympic wrestler and master of catch-as-catch-can wrestling. For almost 4 years, Thesz trained like a machine. Tragos saw his insane work ethic and taught him the secrets to 1,000 painful holds, turning Thesz into one of the most dangerous grapplers on the planet. But his most important mentor was a man whose name was spoken in fear: Ed "Strangler" Lewis. This guy was a living legend, a world champion who had over 6,000 matches and only lost 33 of them. Lewis and his Gold Dust trio basically invented modern wrestling with planned finishes. But it all worked for one reason: Lewis could physically destroy anyone who refused to follow the script. Thesz, a rising star, challenged the aging Lewis to a friendly match. Thesz lost, but the Strangler was blown away by the kid's speed and talent, calling him live as a panther. Lewis saw his successor and took Thesz under his wing, passing down the most brutal secrets of his trade. Thesz soaked it all up, and eventually, he wasn't the student anymore, he was the master. This training was the difference between a worker and a shooter. A worker performs. A shooter can end the performance at any second and win for real. That was Thesz's power. The National Wrestling Alliance, NWA, trusted him with their title because everyone knew he could handle business. If anyone decided to go off script, Thesz had the tools to stretch them, submit them, and remind them who was boss, all without the fans ever knowing. A reputation like Lou Thesz's isn't built on rumors. It's built in moments when the show becomes violently real. These stories are wrestling legends, warnings passed down to rookies about the quiet champion who could turn a performance into a legitimate beatdown. One of the most infamous stories happened in 1964 against a wrestler named Kentaro Oki. Oki was the star student of a Japanese legend, and his bosses promised him everything if he could legitimately beat Thesz and bring the NWA title to Japan. So, in a match in Houston, Oki decided to shoot on the champion and went for a real attack. It was a huge mistake. Thesz, who was just annoyed by the double cross, simply stopped performing. He dismantled Oki with his real wrestling skills, injuring him so badly that Oki had to be carried out on a stretcher. The message was sent across the entire wrestling world. Challenging Lou Thesz for real wasn't just dumb, it was dangerous. This was not a one-time thing. Thesz's job was to be the ultimate problem solver. There are countless stories of him stretching arrogant wrestlers backstage. This wasn't a fight, it was a lesson. He'd lock in an agonizing hold taught to him by Lewis, not to injure, but to inflict just enough pain to demand respect. The message was simple: I can do this to you whenever I want. Now, let's go do the show we agreed on. Maybe the biggest conflict of his career was his rivalry with Nature Boy Buddy Rogers. This was more than two styles clashing, it was two philosophies. Thesz was the quiet, technical machine. Rogers was the loud, bleach-blonde showman, the blueprint for today's WWE superstar. And they had real beef. Thesz thought Rogers was just a gimmick. Rogers thought Thesz was a dinosaur. So, when NWA promoters needed to get the title off a difficult Buddy Rogers in 1963, they called the one man they knew could do it. Legend says Rogers was thinking about refusing to lose, so the 46-year-old Thesz gave him a choice. We can do this the easy way or the hard way. Rogers chose the easy way. Thesz became world champion for the 6th time, but that match changed everything. A group of powerful promoters, led by Vince McMahon Sr., were so mad that they broke away from the NWA, formed their own company, the Worldwide Wrestling Federation, or WWWF, which we now know as WWE, and made Buddy Rogers their first champion. The threat of Lou Thesz's skill was so powerful, it directly led to the creation of the company that dominates wrestling today. For nearly 7 years straight, from 1949 to 1956, Lou Thesz held the NWA World Heavyweight Championship for 2,300 days in a row. This wasn't just because he was popular, it was because he was exactly what the NWA needed: a traveling, fighting, enforcing champion for its most important prize. The NWA in the 1950s was a massive group of territories. The world champion was the one guy who united them all, traveling from city to city to face every local hero. Thesz wasn't just defending a title, he was protecting the entire NWA's business. His presence guaranteed a good show, but more importantly, he guaranteed the NWA's authority. Being the enforcer was a heavy burden. It meant being ready for a real fight, 24/7. It meant dealing with non-stop jealousy. Just look at the incident with Edouard Carpentier in 1957. During a title match, Thesz got a legitimate back injury and had to forfeit. Carpentier was declared the winner, but the NWA refused to recognize it, saying a title can't change hands because of an injury. This caused a massive split, with some promotions recognizing Carpentier as champ anyway. Thesz, the NWA's true champion, had to fix the entire political mess. His influence went global. In 1957, Thesz was the first NWA champ to defend the title in Japan. His matches against their national hero, Ricky Dozan, were huge events that literally helped launch pro wrestling into the mainstream there. In Japan, they called him Tetsujin, the Iron Man. When the NWA wouldn't let him defend the title there, he dropped the belt and toured Japan with his own NWA International Heavyweight Championship, a title that became part of Japan's legendary Triple Crown. Through it all, he was a wrestler's wrestler, not a flashy showman. He was a master. He invented the STF. He's even credited with creating the power bomb, which supposedly happened by accident when a pile driver went wrong and he just slammed the guy down anyway. His signature Thesz press, which Stone Cold Steve Austin later used, was his style in one move: explosive, athletic, and devastating. Every move was a weapon. As wrestling changed in the 70s and 80s, the game changed. The territory system fell apart as the WWF took over. The focus shifted from gritty realism to giant, cartoonish characters. The era of the shooter champion was completely over. In this new world, Lou Thesz was a man out of time. Some people thought his technical style was slow. Since his best years happened before wrestling was on TV everywhere, his incredible accomplishments started to get forgotten by modern fans. While Japan still called him the god of wrestling, the spotlight in America moved to entertainers like Hulk Hogan. But for anyone who knew their history, Thesz was the benchmark. He kept wrestling for 7 decades. It's unbelievable. His last public match was in Japan on December 26, 1990. At 74 years old, he faced his own student, Masahiro Chono. In an absolutely poetic moment, Chono won by making his master submit to the STF, the very move Thesz had invented. His influence is so much bigger than his own matches. He trained a generation of Japanese wrestlers, creating the shoot style that led to modern mixed martial arts. He co-founded the George Tragos / Lou Thesz Professional Wrestling Hall of Fame, making sure the legacy of real shooters would never be forgotten. So why does Lou Thesz still matter today? He matters because he represents the foundation that modern sports entertainment is built on. He's a reminder that behind the curtain, there was once a very real and very dangerous world. As he once said, "I am a wrestler, not a wrestler, not a clown, a wrestler." He was the last of a dying breed, the final link in a chain of legit tough guys going all the way back to his mentor, Ed Strangler Lewis. The fear he commanded wasn't fake. It was from genuine, undeniable skill. He was the champion who didn't need a script to prove he was the best. He just was. Lou Thesz's story is about the line between sport and entertainment, between a fake fight and a real one. He was the king when the champion had to be the toughest man in the business, not for show, but for survival. His 3,749 days as NWA World Heavyweight Champion is a monument to an era when one man could carry an entire sport on his back with pure skill and a reputation for legitimate terror. He was the enforcer, the gatekeeper, and the standard. He was the last real shooter. But what do you guys think? Was Lou Thesz the toughest wrestler of all time? Or does someone else deserve that title? Let us know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this insane dive into wrestling history, make sure you smash that like button and subscribe for more stories about the legends of the Squared Circle. Thanks for watching.